So today we're going to talk about how DMOs can drive business outcomes. For those of you who attended the 21 days of, is it 21 days e-tourism, 30 days e-tourism? I feel like it's gone on for a very long time. It's been very exciting. 28 presentations. So I've done 2 presentations during this month. So I encourage you to stream online. I believe you can stream online. We get a deep dive in identity. I'm not going to cover that today, but if you want some homework, please go back and look at it. So who is Epsilon? Quickly, Epsilon, formerly known as Conversant, has been now in the tourism space for about 3 years. My first ever tourism event was e-tourism in San Francisco 3 years ago. And since then, we've grown rapidly in the tourism space by helping our destination clients embrace the idea that we can prove that every dollar invested is well spent in our community. And that proof begins with how do we identify and reach high-value visitors? Now, this topic is even more important now during COVID, post-COVID, or wherever your region is. I live in Atlanta. They embraced the Jesus Take the Wheel policy not too long ago. So it's very different based on where you live. But we're going to talk today about, if we have time, about 2 cities, one Franklin, Tennessee, and one St. Pete, Clearwater here in Florida, and how they've dealt with recovery and how they've used this idea of high-yielding visitors to maximize return in their communities. So quickly about identity, and again, go back, look at those sessions, is I'm going to maybe say an unpopular opinion to some of the DMOs watching and other places. Website traffic is not the most important thing in driving visitor destination. Clicks are great, impressions are great. We can see those things, we can market, but the role is how do we drive someone to visit and ultimately spend money to make lives better for our communities? That's it. So how do we do that? And many of our clients have embraced this idea of destination management. They were already doing it, and COVID's helped expedite that process on pivoting to airport recovery strategies. How do we help keep our snowbirds over the wintertime to come back to second homes? How do we target other types of folks locally to come out and keep our restaurants open? So where you're on a destination, more than just marketing, how do we help keep our economies alive? And what they do is they embrace our individual. So Conversant, you see here lots of stats, so I put very few on this slide. We see 200 million Americans, just about everything you do, both online and offline, and that 200 million number is important, but you hear lots of stats about profiles, and some people say we have like Dr. Evil and Austin Powers. We have 1 billion profiles. Well, there's only so many people in the United States, so always gut check things based on the population. But for us, we see 200 million folks, which is about 90% of the targetable online U.S. internet audience each month. And we see first-party data, what you're buying, shopping, browsing. We see third-party data, which we built a custom data source for destinations to reach visitors based on modeled spend. And then, of course, behavioral contextual information. But it's all based on seeing an individual at scale. What we see about these people are who you are. So demographic information, census data, VIN numbers, voting records, what you buy, both online and offline, what you like, what you consume via broadcast and other digital consumption, where you go. Every time we bid or do not bid on an impression, we see your Latin long. We know where you're going, what you're doing, how you interact, and where I shop. And the important thing is we're targeting anonymized individuals verified by your shipping and billing address and a purchase. So if you do not buy anything, you're not verified in our system. So we only target people we know who you are across all your devices, including iOS. So how do destinations use this to help drive community impact? Our first case study is for Franklin, Tennessee. I've never been to Franklin. It's a wonderful town outside of Nashville. They wanted to prove the community impact with their digital investment. And you'll hear me use the phrase investment. So we have a core belief that destinations should be able to hold themselves to the same business outcomes that the biggest brands in the world do. So if you want to, you should hold yourself to return on investment, return on ad spend. So top results, we have a great quote from Lauren Ward. You can read it to yourself, but read it, it's nice. But we messaged a bunch of individuals. We drove $29.7 million in unmodeled total message revenue. So we don't have a partnership with anybody to help kind of round out the dots. We see 60% of all U.S. non-cash transactions tied to an individual, and that's what we report back on. We think it's important for destinations to have a core basis of truth. And if they choose to model that out, that's fine. But what you see from us is just what we saw. So it's just straight up, here is who was messaged and the return we saw. So for $197 to 1 return on an ad spend, we measured about 5.2 messages per visitor. So when you break those numbers down more granular, one of the stuff I like to see here is the total message revenue. So it's not just hotel bookings. It's what people actually swiped when they checked out of the hotel. It's what they spent in the restaurants. They filled their gas tank. It's the grocery store they went to. I have 3 small kids. We cannot go on vacation outside of at least one Walmart or Publix or Kroger or Piggly Wiggly, depending on where you are. You can see the investment in media. And then what's important is this number right here, 8 million unique individuals reached. We look and define reach not based on cookies or devices. This was actually almost 20 million different devices. But we see people, so we report on the individual reach deduped against devices, so understanding how many people you must reach to get the visitation you want. And over this time period, we drove 74,000 visitors. These are people that were served an ad that showed up. We're not extrapolating to a household. This is who was messaged and the money they actually spent for a baseline of here is 60% of what people do in our destination. For a conversion rate of 0.92%. So we started thinking about business metrics. We have a lot of business owners in the room. That conversion rate is important. So how do we beat that benchmark year over year, quarter after quarter? How is our conversion rate? Does it cost more to bring folks in the wintertime versus in the summertime? How do we use this to impact seasonality and make sure we're driving revenue and impact for our community year round? We saw 386,000 total transactions of people swiping in market for a $404 average yield per visitor. Now, that means some people had a lot of spend, some people had a little bit of spend. Franklin embraces day trippers from Nashville. They want those people to come down and shop and dine for the day. But you're able to see that yield. If you start thinking about volume over value, I think visitor volume has been a tenet that a lot of destinations have really embraced up until now. And now I think the winning story is how do we show as a destination we brought the most valuable visitors? Because people are going to come, there's different aspects of that visitor journey. As a destination marketing organization, can we bring people that spend more than the average and prove it? When we dig a little deeper, you can break down the return by lodging, local services like municipal attractions, paid parking, entertainment, gas, retail, grocery. So lodging, if you look at the top here, was only about 17% of total spend, which is important. It's great, but your visitors do more than just stay at a hotel. They buy more things. They contribute to your local economy. They're collecting sales tax. You're collecting gas tax. And it's important to be able to share that story with your stakeholders at all times. But for check the box on funding, we proved that this was an ROI positive campaign for your funding source. So yes, we drove the lodging tax, but we also drove so much more for our communities. You can then see the transactions per visitor. You can see your average order value. This is when you checked out at the hotel, and the top performing brands in your report. You can see average order value for dining, nightlife, and for retail. When we see a low AOV, that's typically people coming down for lunch, or you have just a high frequency of transactions. And then you can actually see revenue by feeder market. So this has been teased by a couple other folks so far over the course of the conference. But be able to see, in terms of yield, what visitors spend more and where they live. And that's an important difference between what we do and some other folks out there is I care less about where you are. I care about where you physically live. So we target based off residential shipping and billing address. So if you want to target residents of Atlanta, we know who you are and we'll encourage you. We're not going to serve a geo-targeted campaign to Atlanta and hope we reach the Atlantans. Because we know, I live in Atlanta, we have New Yorkers, we have people from all over the country always passing through. So it's really about who you want to identify and what that residential feeder market is. But then you can see your return by feeder market. So in this case, Atlanta returned and almost indexed as much as New York. So you think of media costs, does it cost more money to run ads other places like out of home in New York or versus Atlanta? You can see LA and Chicago, this was pre-COVID, Dallas, DC, and you can see where their feeder markets over-index. So Dallas, Fort Worth, though they showed up, they actually under-index in terms of revenue per visitor. So we're trying to figure out how do we optimize media over time. It's important to understand where that investment comes from. And then you can actually see the spend by zip code. So everything we do is tied back to that zip code level. So you can see, did they spend heavily in the mall area? Did they spend heavily where we had our hotel or attractions? And you can see that actual transactions in the market, again, not modeled, not extrapolated. Here's what those folks actually spent when they were there. So a lot of our destinations are using this as a tool to look at long-term economic growth opportunities. Did this shopping center we just built pay off? Did this mixed-use facility pay off? Did we manipulate visitors? Manipulate's a tough word. Did we nicely invite visitors to travel other places in our destination to give love to other zip codes? But you can see this at scale and understand that average spend per visitor and what they're missing out on. Some of our clients realize there weren't enough restaurants or some of their larger attractions. They're using this for long-term city planning. You can also see who actually spent money. Now, when you see 65 plus, very big, don't be alarmed. We bundle it by like 5-year brackets, then we just bundle in 65 plus to 40 years of information. When you actually look here, a majority of folks were between that 41 and 55 age group. You can see net worth and household income. We've actually started to adopt and encourage our clients. Even though we're targeting individuals, we're able to see the net worth of those individuals. And a lot of times you'll see, especially here in Florida, you have people on a lot of fixed incomes, retirees, who their household income might be 100K, but their net worth's much higher. So actually target people based on their net worth. And net worth's a good indicator of propensity to spend and travel more frequently. You can also see education level, and lots of other factors of your actual visitors. So these are people who actually showed up, they were messaged, they came to Franklin, and this is what they look like of their actual transactors, those that we're starting to add to, for direct return on investment. I got like 3 minutes, y'all still want to see some more? Great. I have one head nod, so I'll take it as acquiescence, thank you. So St. Pete Clearwater, this is the case study we did for them. Back again pre-COVID. We actually work with Miles for the media on this, so it's like being a partner of theirs. We drove like 25-to-1 lodging ROAS for them alone, 195-to-1 total return on ad spend. We look at everything else. Again, very important to show we are lodging positive to our hotel stakeholders, but also good to see that we're bringing impact for the rest of the community. Pinellas County is kind of interesting too. They actually have a penny for Pinellas. So they get a third of sales tax that goes towards funding as well. And you're able to see the retail transactions and other pieces of that. And I think one of the things that are going to come out of COVID, and some destinations are starting to nod their head, is looking at alternative funding streams and mechanisms. So hotel tax is great, but some destinations and some states have passed sales tax on restaurants. They've done retail sales tax collection as well. So you're able to see how that funding can change based on what your visitor behavior actually is. But now the numbers I'm going to show you is a recent report as well post-COVID. So for this campaign, we actually went back live in Florida here in June. We drove 122-to-1 return on ad spend from June to July. We typically give people time, 90 days to show up. For this period, we truncated it to make sure they showed up quickly. But you're able to see that spend to date. So a lot of questions are asking, are people opening? Are things open? Well, it depends on where you are. But for some destinations, it's getting close to business coming back. I know where I live in Metro Atlanta, things seem they're open again. Florida, based on your local governance, it depends. But people seem to be opening back up. There's a pent-up demand to travel. We saw right here, you had a retail ad spend of 17-to-1. Lodging return wasn't as high. You did have a lot of day trippers that came down from Daytona and Orlando. But you think about a lot of the Visit Florida strategy was we want those locals to come to other places. So targeting locals to come, hopefully spend the night, but just getting that retail volume, that restaurant volume helps keep your destination product ready. You have to keep your business ready to when you're ramped back up to be able to have a product that people want to invest in and come see and experience. Because of the strategy, you can see here too, Orlando, Daytona, which if you're not familiar where St. Pete is, it's right down the interstate from here. You can see that return on ad spend. You can see Atlanta, wasn't as strong as it historically is, but this was a really early report. So I went on my family vacation in August, not July. So you can start seeing that timing on when people actually show up. And the goal is ultimately as a destination, you can embrace the same thing that a lot of the businesses and corporations and brands do, is how do we drive revenue return quarter after quarter? What quarters are slow months? And if there's seasonalities that impact, who comes during our winter, who comes in our fall, who comes in our spring. Let's match just people that look like those people to drive more revenue. If you want to chat about how we build the audiences, we create custom audiences per destination based off past spenders to drive the most high-yielding people possible. Come see me afterwards. Love to talk to you more.